So, ladies and gentlemen, we are about to start the last session of the day. We have heard distinguished experts and panelists discussing about the role of diaspora investment, the role of remittances for climate adaptation. Now, this is the session in which we are going to present you our theory of change. We are going to present you ideas on how to leverage on what has been discussed today, and some concrete proposals in terms of actions and intervention that we could develop together. So I'm going to call to the podium Steve Wilson, Pedro de Vasconcelos, Frédéric Ponceau, and Maxime Thibault. And you have indicatively half an hour . Sure. Okay, sorry. So Steve is here to present you the main outlines of this proposal, and then we will engage also with you in the discussion on what it is next, what it is needed, what you believe is relevant for your specific country or organization.
I'm not clicking anything. Fred is going to do the overhead. Okay. Okay. All right. This is going to be a brief overview of a proposed program called the Sustainability, Stability, and Security 3S Initiative in Africa, subtitled Leveraging Diaspora Resources for Climate Resilience and Sustainable Land Use. Rather unwieldy title, but I think it goes right to the heart of the matter, which is that in the African Sahel and the Great Green Wall of that region, global climate change and land degradation are reducing the life chances of millions. It is a region where agriculture is primarily rain-fed, and it is afflicted by recurrent drought, variable precipitation that worsens food and water security, and increasing temperatures decrease the yields of staple crops such as maize, millet, sorghum. Extreme heat dries out soil, leads to wind erosion, which further strips fertile topsoil, reducing the ability of land to support vegetation. Unsustainable land practices, of course, further worsen land degradation and desertification, contributing to even greater climate change and poverty and migration. These hazards, of course, undermine livelihoods and life and public health, food and water security, productivity, and the viability of settlements, to name a few of the humanitarian challenges that arise from this issue. The exponential growth in the number of rural youth creates further incentives to migrate in these conditions. Added to all this, that the financing for climate adaptation as a part of climate finance and resilience building in developing countries lags by a significant margin the financing for climate mitigation, or those suite of efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions that are warming the climate and destabilizing the global atmosphere. This, of course, is a hugely important topic and objective, but of course, the impact of 250 years of burning long sequestered sunshine in the form of coal, gas, and oil, which has unleashed vast amounts of wealth in the industrial north, is afflicting a large part of the world that didn't share in that wealth creation and had very little to do with the emissions that are now destabilizing the climate and threatening the lives of many. So the overall objective of this program is to maximize the impact of migrant remittances and diaspora investment for rural climate resilience and sustainable land use, while at the same time generating livelihoods and reducing the incentives to migrate. So what we have is a fair intersection of certain Venn diagrams, if you will, certain specialties that are going to require a new framing, but this is not a boutique. This is a huge issue, and we are optimistic that these private flows, both on the remittances side and from diaspora investors, can contribute to lasting and important progress for the inhabitants of this region. Now, remittances, to go back to basics, of course, are private money transfers sent back home that enable families to achieve their own SDGs. About a quarter, on average, of these remittances are either saved or invested. And in rural areas, we know that some of these monies are being spent on tools, products, and services that are helping people to actually adapt to changing climate, to water shortages, rising temperatures, drought, et cetera. And in fact, that's one of the reasons why the first part of this will be a very, very important addition to the global knowledge, which is to look at is what we call climate market assessments, climate-focused market assessments of remittances and diaspora investment, how remittances are actually being spent in participating countries and their subregions on issues that are not labeled using climate jargon as adaptation or resilience or green or sustainable, but are in fact attempts to adjust, as farmers have done from time immemorial, to changing conditions. And as I indicated earlier, we think that these farmers, just like the gentleman from CGAP said that the poor can be highly rational in using their money, we would argue that based on limited information, farmers can also be highly rational, even in the face of great constraints and uncertainties. So that's on the migrant remittances side. Of course, the diaspora, we've heard from several individuals, diaspora investors are in fact investing in rural areas, in agriculture and land and related issues, but we believe are aware, perhaps not based on the best climate science, that changing climate is in fact a material threat to these potential investments or current investments, and also recognize that concrete efforts to materially improve the resilience of agricultural operations or related enterprises are also a plus, also are an attraction potentially to diaspora investors. You know, the remittance flows, it's been indicated, are resilient, just like the migrants who send them. In fact, after years of impressive growth, the onset of COVID-19, which, you know, has slowed this proposal. Pedro and I were talking about this in February of 2020, and had come up with a little concept note, and in 1 month, the world changed. And so thankfully, we're emerging from that. During the worst trough of COVID-19, overall remittance flows went down by only 1%. Now, if we stop to consider the status of migrant workers in many countries, they didn't have access to the social safety nets that were being given. They often worked in highly vulnerable jobs where they were exposed to the virus. They had to work, in many cases, multiple jobs, and in the aggregate, this group was able to send only 1% less, rebounding the following year by 10%. If this is not evidence of resilience, of perseverance, of risk tolerance of a group, I don't know what is. So these flows have proven to be very resilient, and diaspora investors themselves, migrants, embody and even, these are entrepreneurs, and not everybody's an entrepreneur, as Pedro, pointed out in the previous panel. Migrant investors are, so they have demonstrated a tremendous market knowledge, and certainly understand their home markets and those challenges. Should I just briefly talk about the 4 components, Fred, or do you want to do that? You want to do it? Okay. So go ahead.
Thank you, Stephen. So we have outlined a strategy of intervention, and As usual, for a program, our project has 4 components. So I will provide the outline of those components rapidly, and then we will discuss further each component and also gather your inputs, your question. This is the collaborative process at this stage. So the first component will consist in making climate-focused market assessment for remittances and diaspora investment. Second component is about innovation to leverage remittances for climate resilience and sustainable land use. Component 3 is about diaspora investment for the same purpose. And the fourth component is about knowledge sharing and then policy outreach and policy engagement. So those are the 4 components. So the first one, the aim is to build a body of evidences around remittances, diaspora investment, but also use opportunities to raise awareness, commit the different audiences that will be targeted by the project. And we will do so addressing the 3 main topics, so remittances, diaspora investment, and use opportunities. So the information that will be gathered will be country specific. So to help to make informed decision, also to support engagement of national stakeholders, and to prepare the design of innovative interventions. So for remittances, we go through a market diagnostic. We did so already with the Prime project. You have some examples of our remit scope reports, so you can go through it. This is the same template that we will use more or less, but including, of course, some more insights on resilient products that are connected to remittances. So we mentioned direct remittances, we mentioned link services to remittances, such as savings, loans that are catering to a remittance household. And we will undertake also some surveys to understand the practices that are used by households to adapt to climate change. So those practices will help us to design the innovations that we want to be incremental and not too disruptive, so they will be implementable. On diaspora investment, we'll make some studies as well on mapping the diaspora, what they want, what they do, what are the different partners in terms of professional investment partners they could partner with, they could benefit from the support for each country, and also with a corridor approach, because we need to understand exactly the differences among the diaspora around the world for a typical country. We need to understand what is specific to diaspora in destination countries, which always differ. This responds to the module question to some extent. And included in the mapping, we will also, of course, consider the public initiatives that are ongoing or that have been implemented in the past, so we can also build upon the lessons learned of those initiatives. On youth opportunities, we will assess the migration patterns to understand how youth is migrating locally, regionally, and across continent. So we understand the type of jobs they are also aiming to get when they are migrating, the level of incomes also they intend to get. And assessing also the rural opportunities that are offered to the youth by a public sector, and what are the programs that are working the best, including IFAD intervention in said countries. So those diagnostics will help us to engage the different stakeholders, the private sector stakeholders, the public sector, and also IFAD, of course, and other donor organizations. So component 2 is about is to leverage innovation for remittances. So there are mainly two core axes of intervention: is to expand remittances and to bundle with financial services, resilient building non-financial services. So expanding remittances and financial services is mainly to increase access at the last mile, promote digital remittances, and foster the use of financial products that facilitate resilience building, such as savings, insurance, loans mainly. And on top of those financial services catered to remittance households, including migrant workers, but also recipients in a targeted country. We would like to promote a major innovation to combine with the provision of financial services, awareness raising and capacity building, provision of weather and climate information and extension services, and improving the capacity of suppliers, so financial service providers mainly, to elaborate some products that are also, let's say, climate sensitive. On component 3, it's about investment, so promoting innovation in investment. So the first step will be to engage with the diaspora, as we understood, discussing with Modou. It's very important to engage at the beginning of the program, the diaspora, to understand what they need, what also their level of awareness about climate changes and how they can, the opportunities and the risks that are surrounding investment in their country of origin, especially in rural areas. The second activity we want to undertake is to establish what we call an investment marketplace, which is actually a platform linking the diaspora with professional investment professionals. So they speak the main language, the same language. They understand also how to work together and also identify some investment opportunities that are focused on resilience for climate adaptation. Then we will launch some call for proposals. So we have some grant-funded project with professional investors and the diaspora, so to test and scale some investment models. And last but not least, we will involve the diaspora, so the capital, the human resources of the diaspora, to monitor young entrepreneurs and share also their knowledge with entrepreneurs of the country of origin, in addition to their financial capital. Component 4 will be, the aim is to raise awareness, but also to engage the national, international stakeholders on the nexus between climate change and the opportunities offered by remittances and diaspora investment. So locally, the main entity will be Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Environment. National adaptation plans will also be considered. And we'll also work with the financial sector, the policymakers, and the private sector, of course. But the regulatory and policymakers, so to elaborate some regulatory framework and strategies that are both inclusive and enabling the development of secure, safe remittances and investments for the diaspora. And the last set of activities will consist in sharing learnings, as we do at IFAD, especially the FFR, through national, regional, and global platform and forums, such as the GFRID, IDFR, so those, let's say, flagship event and product that FFR is regularly implementing, and of course, a website and knowledge portal publication. So this is basically the activity that will be implemented in the fourth component. So this is, in short, the four components we want to implement through this program. And now I open the floor for discussions and contributions.
Thank you very much, Fred. I suggest that you, Fred, Pedro, Maxime, and Steve join us on the podium here so that we open the floor for questions and discussions about this. And you can facilitate the dialogue with our colleagues. Thank you. Luis.
Can we put the four components on the screen for everybody? I'm not sure. I got a very blurry picture when I took a photograph of it. So if we could do that, would be great. Thanks.
Are we putting? Okay. So just before now this is really free talk, is to gather impressions on this, but I just want to add a few words about what you just heard. This approach is what IFAD has learned over many years of implementations of projects related to remittances, diaspora investment, and entrepreneurship. It is very simple. It's the activities on research on data. We know for what, we know what kind. Without that, it's a no-go. We need to support operations in many of this. The IFAD has been gained a lot of experience, both remittances and diaspora investment, on the mechanism not only that work, but that stimulate also scaling up. And this is basically what it is proposed. And on the third is a critical aspect of not only the dissemination of that knowledge that we have on component one, but the policy engagement, the enabling environment, be it for remittances or for diaspora investment. This is crucial. Without that, we basically see that we constantly get a failure in our testings. So these are the main aspects. Now, why you don't see more detail? Well, what countries, etc., is because it's a concept that we have prepared. And the idea here is countries of interest can showcase, and that can be adapted either to a country level approach, pick one country, and in this case, it would be also with the corridors are more relevant in terms of diaspora investment or remittances flows, but it also can be for a set of countries or region-wide. We have experience in the two, but this is why we left it open, because we put forward what we believe is essential, what works, but since we're connecting with other topics, we would love to hear also your ideas, what you think might be missing in here. And this is, I think, while we are proposing this session is really to hear you out with everything that you've heard since 9 o'clock this morning. It was a lot to take in, but I'm pretty sure that you might still have any questions that can be crucial right now at our final, let's say, design stage. So with that, I would like to open the floor to any questions on what you've seen on the components. We have several hands. Great. So I think I saw this gentleman first hand, I think, then followed by the lady, then you, Mr., and then you. So in that order, if it's fine. 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you can, 5. And if I may ask you is to introduce yourself.
Thank you. I'm Piero Grippa. I work for Italian Agency for Development Cooperation. I would like to connect some points from several things that I've heard from this morning. Some key aspects. I've heard that financial inclusion is transformative. I've heard that education is key to scalability, to sustainability. So I'm thinking about the role of households, families receiving remittances as to really set the agenda. I think we have to go to the communities, to go to the families, to know what the remittances are for, because the community, the families, the households really know what they need, basically. So I would like to ask you about this program approach. If there is a way to think the household, the communities as agenda setting role, and how this kind of role evolves through the components. I understand that the 4 components are a path. So if it's the case, how these people evolve in their role of setting the agenda. And I would like also a little more thing. This morning I've heard the lack of institutional trust as pushing back the possibility to put value to remittances. I would like to know what you think about it, and if in this lack of institutional trust, we can consider also the different kinds of motivations to for people to migrate. I'm thinking about, we have labor migrants. That is, of course, the main topic we discussed, but we have also asylum seekers, refugees. I don't know if you think that migrants that are not migrating for purely economical and labor reason can meet more lack of institutional trust when it comes to remittances. Thank you.
I'll turn this over to other panelists, but I just wanted to address the household issue and climate and sustainable land use. EFAD, working in partnership with the World Bank, has really given us a tremendous amount of information about migrant remittances, the totals, the data, which did not exist just 20 years ago. But it's not disaggregated in terms of how are these households, how are remittance families actually spending their money in rural areas? It's an excellent question, and that's why the first component seeks to address that through surveying and various accepted methodologies. There is a scattered empirical literature out there from various countries and in various contexts that points to the fact that people in rural areas are in fact engaged in using their remittances on agriculture or related rural enterprises and activities in ways that improve their adaptive, it's a response to climate risks like drought, heat, et cetera. We would like to delve down in a formal, standardized way, and I think using that data, I think we can contribute to something that could be potentially globally scalable. And that's just on the climate side. Pedro, do you want to say?
Just wanted to second what you said. With the expertise that we have on data is at the key of all that. Again, in 2000, when remittances were discovered by the international community, they started to exist. They existed already. We just didn't know anything about that, and we had a lot of misconceptions. This is dirty money, money laundering, et cetera, et cetera. Data has changed all that. Central banks, this is the experience for Latin America, central banks had no idea about these flows. They were actually putting in the errors of omissions. Now things have changed, but they have changed because surveys were made, asking people on the sending side, do you send remittances? How much? Yes. From that, on the receiving side, same questions. And then when they were presented with flows that were captured nowhere. And that created change. What I'm trying to say by that is surveying is extremely important in every aspect as to not the flow, but the uses, the reality of the people. Ideal world is what we said this morning is remittances families should be a target group, a specific target group, because they are different from what they're going through. They're actually very different from those that don't receive remittances. And national governments should take that into consideration, not just to ask the central bank how much money migrants are benefiting, but what is the reality of these families? National surveys should do that. No country except maybe a few do that. Mexico has done some examples on this, including the remittances component in the national surveys. Every country that has a high, basically every country that has receive remittances that is equal to 3% of the GDP should de facto include this. Very few do it. So here the idea is to support not only that exercise, but to show how relevant it is then for the following components. The second question that you ask is, we're looking at remittances, recipients of diaspora investment. What about asylum seekers? If you are supporting your family back home, then you might be also an asylum seeker or a future returnee. Or the point is, if you have moved with because of war, destitution, with the entire family, well, you're not part of that. So basically, it depends on the cases. There's very good examples for refugees on what they're doing. Refugees that are integrating. We see that a lot in Kenya, for instance. But they receive remittances in the other case. So this is maybe another problem that we have not touched upon. But I hope that answers your question. Then I don't know if there's anybody, or we go for the next question.
Just on the lack of trust, lack of confidence, because you said it twice and other people said it as well. This is a key aspect of any behaviors that is targeting diaspora, especially when it comes from the public sector. So this is a key element or key factor to consider. So in this case, there are 2 or 3 levers to circumvent this lack of confidence, because this is due to their own experience. What they saw is whatsoever they were trying to do, especially regarding investment, they have been screwed. So this is why they are so reluctant, and the reason why they left this country is because they consider the institutions are weak. So at the very beginning, they are not buying any concept that come from their own country. So as soon as you as you consider their expectations, so they express what they want, so they feel more not confident, but at least engaged. Then you work with professionals. So for investment, you work with private sector or public behaviors that have a proven track record. So you work with something that is already either recognized because of private sector qualification or already proven. So this is the different approaches to build that confidence, and not also to make too disruptive innovations. Because if it's too disruptive, and we had this experience in different contexts, there's no buying. So there are different elements. But this is something that must be taken with seriously at the very beginning.
Merci, bonjour à tous. Je suis Maurielle Bédé, je viens du Bénin. Je suis au ministère en charge de l'environnement du Bénin. Je dirais que le débat est très intéressant parce que si on arrive à mettre en place l'approche qui est proposée, cela devait rendre beaucoup plus offensibles les envois de fonds qui sont faits vers les pays, parce que cela deviendra un fonds capital pour le développement. Mais ma préoccupation demeure en partie celle que mon prédécesseur a prise, qui est celle qui est spécifique et la spécificité de chaque pays. Parce que il faut pouvoir dire à quoi servent les envois de fonds, quel est le niveau de disponibilité de fonds vers le secteur agricole, quelle est la proportion de ces fonds-là vers le secteur agricole, et pouvoir également comprendre comment est-ce qu'on peut rendre disponible un capital pour son utilisation. Et donc, la deuxième chose est celle qui a été dite ce matin, c'est quel est le cadre de travail, le cadre d'investissement dans chacun des pays, parce qu'il n'est pas le même et il est très variable. Il rejoint en partie également le cadre politique dans certains pays. Il ne faut pas oublier le fait politique au niveau des pays. Donc, il faut également réfléchir à ça. Et je ne sais pas s'il ne sera pas opportun, donc, pour aboutir à vraiment aux objectifs du 3S, de réfléchir à un minimum d'informations, je ne dirais pas des études parce que je ne sais pas comment cela peut être vu, mais qu'il y ait au moins des concertations ou des approches de recherche, un petit bout de recherche au niveau de nos États pour savoir un peu comment le contexte est et comment est-ce que on pourrait intégrer ces problématiques-là. C'est vrai qu'en écoutant certains aujourd'hui, j'ai eu l'impression que il y en avait qui étaient en avance, mais quand on regarde également la problématique, il ne faut pas qu'on se leurre parce que quand vous venez et que vous apportez parfois, ceux qui sont sur place se disent, mais il faut que je parte également pour que je puisse apporter. Et on sait que dans certaines familles dans la région ouest africaine, les gens cotisent pour qu'un individu parte. Donc, comment est-ce qu'on va gérer les mentalités? Comment est-ce qu'on va gérer la problématique en elle-même? Et il faut vraiment qu'on s'asseye, qu'on mette, je ne sais pas, ça peut se faire à distance, qu'il y ait des sociologues, qu'il y ait des anthropologues, qu'il y ait des environnementalistes, qu'il y ait vraiment un groupe de travailleurs qui réfléchissent à l'essence même de la chose en partant par les processus par lesquels les gens sont arrivés à migrer. Aujourd'hui, s'ajoute la migration climatique. J'étais sur le terrain, je ne sais plus, avec des projets qu'on a avec la GIZ. Et j'ai des agriculteurs qui m'ont dit aujourd'hui, moi, je cotise pour que mon enfant parte. Si, je l'ai entendu il n'y a pas 2 mois. Je cotise pour que mon enfant parte. Je vends mon bétail pour que mon enfant parte. Donc, c'est un vrai problème parce que ces rendements ne sont plus ceux qui étaient il y a 5 ans, il y a 10 ans. Il ne voit même pas de développement pour son enfant dans le système dans lequel lui-même il est. Donc, il faut vraiment qu'on mette en place, qu'on collecte toutes ces informations, qu'on s'asseye et qu'on réfléchisse vraiment à comment est-ce qu'on met en place un processus pour qu'on ait vraiment de la durabilité. Voilà vraiment ce que je voulais apporter au débat qu'on est en train de faire. Merci.
Thank you on that. You're absolutely right. And we cannot not look at this because it might seem complicated. It's the reality, and we're just facing it. We can try to flourish it if we want. We can omit certain things, and this is what I think the entire community has been doing for many years, is just speak about what they feel like speaking and forget the other thing. Every single remittances is the equivalent at one social family fracture, period. That's it by default. Every flow that is sent, meaning it's somebody is not with their loved one. And if you're sending money, that means you care. It is not a separation where both are happy of being separated. Otherwise, I don't think that there would be money. But this is just me. So it is something serious. It is something that is a big burden and it's a very heavy weight. But they are confronted with a reality where indeed the majority, and we see that a lot, where we're going to send our cleverest, our smartest, as more in front, débrouillard, whoever thinks that it can make it. He can make it and he's going to support us. He's just doing it from abroad. This is a coping strategy, a reality. It is not talked about. You would not see that in any government plan because maybe we should not say it. We all know it, but we don't say it. That's, I believe, the first mistake. Let's address reality as it is, because then we were going to find realistic solutions to this. And I think and this is why component one, it is not just about doing studies. And I think we had a lot of experience in what works, what doesn't, and a lot more can be done. But the surveys, realistic, how to ask the questions, what are we really looking for? Are we afraid of what the surveys might say? Because I can understand some governments. This can be very politically fueled. For a country to state that remittances is 13% of your GDP is acknowledging that you have a major issue because people are leaving, you're not providing to them. If I may say so, it takes a lot of guts to admit that. But the right thing to do is this. This is the reality. There might be other things, climate affecting it, but not only. So the studies, the surveys is to bring that reality so we can take informed decisions, informed policies. And it should not just be the central bank talking about this. Minister of Agriculture never talking about remittances because they think it's their colleagues from the central banks. On the contrary, they should know because actually they should be more involved really than just a mere transaction. So I think this is what component one is trying to do in liaison with component four. What do we do with that? Informed decisions, partnerships. Mauro mentioned about the National Remittances Stakeholder Network. That sounds like another talk show. On the contrary, we've been actually proving that bringing different stakeholders to the table, different ministries, private sector actors that are there. The private sector is there to make money. But if you tell them that they can they can make good and do money at the same time, that's a win-win proposition. Telling to the government that the private sector could help them, it's a win-win proposition as well. We have this expertise and experience right now at country level. We think that it can be amplified to other subjects, and I think climate is one of them. So thank you for your question and reality check, and the idea is indeed to include that.
Just to reinforce that, of course, each country is different. Each situation is different. Specificities matter dramatically. And in terms of remittances, and these are the experts, but we're here today to celebrate the potential of these flows. But just in my opinion, they are also, in some sense, the return on a fair amount of suffering, of the separation of families out of necessity. And is there a way that return can inform or build a future where that kind of suffering is less necessary? That's what I think we're trying to do.
So one of the reasons that what we discuss when we see that migration happens due to climate change, that is one major aspect, and desertification contributes to that as well. However, migration exists even when these things don't happen, and very often, and particularly for young people across the globe, that is the result of the lack of their integration in the rural economies. So this is well observed by the group that worked on this concept note. And the opportunity for diaspora investment, as I see it, is that diaspora investment could be potentially leveraged to build out those rural economies, to support those youth to actually seek their jobs and their happiness where they come from. That doesn't mean that they won't leave, but having opportunities to work, having opportunities to start and grow their business is definitely something that might actually get them to return back to their home countries or not even leave in the first place. So that would be just one additional point where component 3 could contribute to that.
A quick one, and if we can put the component 1 slide. I don't know if there's someone behind the computer, but this is what we had in mind also in youth opportunity. So migration patterns and component 1, yeah. And rural opportunity for the youth is to allow the youth to make some cost benefit analysis. Should I stay or should I go? And but still they will have their dreams. So we, as you said it, we won't stop the migration, but at least we can give some clear information about the strategy to migrate or to stay.
Can you, okay, can you, thank you for that. We like to sometimes simplify, and there's a motto that we do say in the FFR, and then around the community working on this, migration should be a choice rather than a necessity. And I think this is what we're trying to work is, where is a necessity is what we should try to bring down, to eradicate, because it will always exist those that desire to do so. Thank you for that. I think we have now our
Yeah, thank you very
gentleman, and I
much.
think then will be you, and then
Ashan Kegbe, I'm the USSD National Focal Point for Ghana. Looking at the various components, pardon me if I'm biased towards land. So we believe that land is actually the mother of all the cross-cutting issues. And looking at the maybe, okay, maybe I have to sit well. Yeah, what I'm saying is that, pardon me if I'm being biased towards land, because we see land as the mother of all the cross-cutting issues. Looking at the various components, land doesn't come out playing a huge role as I'm expecting. Maybe my consolation is that when we go into developing the proposal, land will certainly come out. The first component, the emphasis is on, I think, market assessment also. And then the second component is remittances. Then the leverage, diaspora, that's on the third component. And they are all talking to building resilience using sustainable land management. But if you look at what we always talk of, tackling climate change, everybody and the approach that he or she uses. Someone will say, oh, I want to cut emissions from the transport sector. Someone will say, oh, renewable energy and all that. For us, our focus is on the land, using sustainable land management interventions. And that is the way to go. And as I mentioned earlier, my consolation is that when we go into the development of the proposal, the land issue will come out. Now, the fourth component, which is knowledge sharing and policy outreach, you refer to certain ministries. Those, and though you said et cetera, but then it's a guide. I wish we could be very specific. We can't come out with every ministry, but there is a specific ministry, since we are talking about funds, and that ministry is in every country, and that's Ministry of Finance. The et cetera that is stated could take care of Ministry of, but someone can forget about it and use a different ministry. So my suggestion is that let's introduce Ministry of Finance as one of the key institutions. Thank you very much.
can I jump in? I fully agree, and you're getting the summary. So my apologies when I say etc. That shouldn't be, but I fully agree with you on the examples and being precise and being adapted to the country. And depending on the country, some ministry might be more relevant. I would like is to respond to your first point. What remittances projects have been, on the examples that we've seen, is always an add-on. We're going to do a project on this, and let's look if remittances can be sugar-coated on top of that for the extra funding, the extra, and that has always been a problem and a failure, because suddenly it is not just doing the job of bringing more funds, etc. It requires its own intervention, looking at it directly. And at IFAD, I can say the experience that we had is that then that component is dropped, because it was supposed just to be an additional supportive component, and then it becomes a component of work. And that has been a problem. This is why in this approach, we really twisted it and bring it from the migrants, remittance families, and diaspora perspective, land is in the title. Land is definitely the area to look to connect to that. But from the perspective of those that want to invest on that, it is not to address all the problems of land just to see where we can find support, but it is to ensure that their desires to address issues at land level will be done according to their needs and means. So it is to maybe come to the same place, but from a different pathway. This is based on the learning, on our learnings, basically, on what works or not, particularly when dealing with ministries that otherwise would not be working on this issue. Is I don't want to learn everything that you just told me today since 9 o'clock on remittances. They did. Can you finance it? This is sometimes what we get. Can they finance? And when is the check coming? And yeah, that's it. So we need to look into this as a focus group, if we can say like that, as a specifically target group, and understand it. So there's a learning curve, and this is why we presented from that perspective, rather than just for a myriad of thematics that we would like to, throw remittances and diaspora. Otherwise, we're going to have the same comment that our colleague that was here just said: is you look at us as just piggy banks, and that's it. You don't even ask us our advice, and then we know the results. We've seen it over and over. It just doesn't work. So I don't know if that addresses the question, but what you're seeing is a PowerPoint. Of course, inside we are going more in examples, because that's what member states or countries that would like to implement this in their own country should see. You as a representative in this field, you need to see that this can be brought to the interest of, in this case, land. Absolutely. Sorry, I'm being long, and I feel like I'm monopolizing. So.
Yeah, it's always hard, to talk after you, Pedro. You say so many things, and yeah. I just want to confirm that land will have a pivotal role, in this program, as like land as a pivotal role, for biodiversity, for land productivity, and climate adaptation, and climate mitigation. So maybe we didn't explain that so much, this morning when we present a little IFAD works, but IFAD investment, is totally focused also on totally climate sensitive and biodiversity sensitive, and put a great role, on sustainable land management in each of activities that are implemented in the country. So you can be sure, like this is not only an effort by the team in charge of remittances at IFAD, but this is a whole effort, by the whole IFAD, including the division in charge of natural resource management, the unit in charge of natural resource management, unit in charge of climate finance and environmental finance. So you can be sure that everything will be taken into account in the full proposal.
Thank you very much. I'm Daniele Panzeri from the IOM, the International Organization for Migrations. And well, first of all, thank you very much. I think it has been a very fascinating and enriching day with a lot of information and a lot of examples also of different initiatives and experiences. And I think this is actually one of the most important thing of our role as international organization, I think, is actually to come together and try to showcase all the experiences and learn from one each other. So this is also to answer to the question this morning was raised by a colleague from FAO on the role of our organizations. Then a few comments on the project. There was a lot of discussions about de-risking today, how we can de-risk the investments from diaspora and migrant communities to the countries of origin. I think maybe this is actually something that should be included into the project in terms of trying to see how possible innovative ideas. I don't know, like for instance, if you ever thought or if you have experiences on guarantee funds, would that be useful? This is just a question. Then another point is more on criteria for the selection of the countries. Taking as an example a project that we are developing at the global level, in which two main criteria have been chosen. And the first one is actually to go in countries that are more fragile in terms of vulnerability to climate change. And on the other side, also to make sure that they have a strong diaspora community and to make sure that they have possibly also an important component of remittances that are going into their balance of payment. And this is actually, for instance, in this project, it was decided to go for the so-called SIDS, which are the small island developing states. Another point, and sorry, is about the remittances. I mean, today we saw what are all the positive aspects of remittances, and of course, there are also, as we all know, some negative aspects as well. There is a social cost. They are very costly, not only because of the transfer cost, but they are also very costly because, as you mentioned, Pedro, there are also private lives that are involved, people that are missing home. And but at the same time, also, those social costs are more costly to the most fragile of the communities, especially women, for instance, that are maybe alone in countries of destination and have to support and provide for their families at home. So one thing that we learned the hard way in a previous experience with a project in Tunisia is that really financial inclusion and working on financial literacy is really important. And this is something that should be, I guess, included. Last but not the least, it was a very interesting comment about the narrative somehow, or how the words are charged of meaning. And so if we can go for, if we can use the word rural or not. Well, I think climate change is also changing that, is changing the narratives in a way. And I think this is something that we should take into account, in the sense that there is something that we are working on how rural areas are impacting, or how metropolitan areas are actually having a close link with the mountain areas around those cities. Because now with climate change, people are possibly not staying, especially in rich countries, staying in the same place all the time for the entire time of the year. So there might be some periodic movements in and out from the cities. So I think the kind of distinction that we have now, that is very rigid in terms of rural and urban, might actually change a little bit. There is already a study that is called Metro Montagna in Italian. So it's about the concept of a city that actually expands towards the hills and mountains around it, because there is an emerging trend of some people moving there for certain months of the year. So those are just few comments. Thank you.
Sorry, can I take profit of the microphone just very quick?
Okay.
Anna Ferro from CESPI, a think tank based in Italy. If you can be more specific on innovation, what do you mean? And if it's really important to include this word in two components, because something innovative, is it better than something old-fashioned that is new in that context? So I guess you can also reply, and maybe also insisting in remittances and diaspora engagement, because you're asking for migrants to put their money, but also in engaging in projects. So I think it would be important also for the language and for the concept behind. Thanks.
Thank you for that. And it's true, there might be some marketing approach to these things and what we're appealing to it. I believe that innovation, the problem is too much word innovation, but in this case, it is innovation for most of remittance families. Bringing credit is incredibly innovating, life-changing. Actually, innovation is just not of a too much brilliant word. It should be life-changing innovations. So it depends from who sees it, but I fully agree with you. We should look into more of the semantics, because at the end of the day, I think these programs are to get the buy-in from governments. that goes for the selection. Which country do we pick and so on? We are not to pick. I mean, IFAD has its own program, and when we see the opportunity, we're going to move on. As we say, 3% of GDP, you have to do something in it. You don't have it, it's almost a crime. But for the countries that might be interested in leveraging the capital that they have abroad, and kill that circle, that vicious circles that we've been discussing, this is sort of a plan, a guidelines of what can be done, and then IFAD and other partners can help implement. We're just bringing here to the table the lessons learned, as we said, after 70 projects in 50 countries. What we learn, and the most interesting is our failures. Not that there are that many, but there's a good number, and this should not be replicated. And this would be even more of a crime of having public money and yet do the same mistakes again. I don't know, Fred, if you wanted to add anything on the guarantee funds or the innovation, what the gentleman has been putting. The mechanism basically that.
Well, innovation, well, I think it's an issue of semantic, something old-fashioned, implementing in a context where it didn't exist. I think this is innovation. Now, if you want to know the type of innovation we'd like to promote, it's quality services, financial services that are suited for the migrants, suited for the household families. That doesn't exist in many countries. So these are, we can call them new product or suited product. Let's not focus on innovation, but this is the type of new things we would like to see happening, and also the bundling of non-financial services with financial services. So this is for, let's say, the remittance component, and for diaspora investment, it's mainly to promote models that value the resources of the migrants, to invest in SMEs, to invest in ventures that are creating jobs and spillover effect along value chains. So these are the type of innovation. Also insurance, weather insurance, direct payment of remittances. So to purchase goods, to purchase inputs, to pay the premium of insurance or green remittances. So to buy some solar system or solar kit, as our colleagues has explained. This is the kind of new things we'd like to promote. On de-risking, I think everything is about de-risking. It's project de-risking investment, de-risking remittances, or leveraging remittances to de-risk households against climate shocks. So guarantee fund, this is one tool, but there are many others. So that would be my response. The short one.
You want to use?
Just to say that, to follow on Fred's point, there are many others. There's first loss guarantees in terms of credit instruments. Colleague from Lavoca Impact mentioned blended finance, putting private money in with public climate finance in a structured way that can help lower the risk of investment in various areas, and certainly would be highly relevant working with financial service providers towards expanding access to credit and other financial products for in rural communities. So there's a lot that can be done, and none of this is particularly new, and it's been tried in many contexts.
Yeah, just a quick word, on innovation. So this is not only technical or digital innovation. We will focus also on social innovation. What Mudu present, this afternoon was like very, very related to social innovation, and also to financial innovation. The program you mentioned, Steve, and that Raul made a quick intervention on it. This Griffin approach is totally an innovative approach. To blend finance with different actors from private sector, involving national agricultural bank and other kind of actors. So this is like, I would say, the realm, where we will work on this innovative aspect in component 2 and 3.
Correct. One thing that would be wrong is to say replace innovations with traditional, because they don't exist. So by definition, it should be, but it could be then removed and say that innovation is a principle, guiding principle for all this. But I think what we're seeing is we still don't have a critical mass of examples in this regard to really be able to call it traditional. There is one country on earth that does it very well. No, that hasn't happened. There is cases in history, as I mentioned before, Southern Europe in the 80s and other, where we have very good lessons learned that should actually be revived, where remittances cost to zero was there, where the financial sector, commercial banks tapped into diaspora like there was no tomorrow, and we were able to survive. The Cajas de Ahorro of Spain have actually half of the banking sector, and you wonder why. Because they really tap on the diaspora. They believe in the diaspora, that the diaspora wanted to send money back to their communities. So they enter into that. And this is why the famous cajas in Spain are so big compared to other countries. So there's a good lessons learned that should be picked on this. But today, I don't know if we sell a traditional, but case to look into. Now, I know you've been waiting forever, so I will, and then you want, Zach, you want also to intervene, right?
Yeah, but whatever.
Yes, if you don't mind.
Thank you very much. My name is Fatuma from the Sahara Insight Observatory. I'm in charge for the topics related to biodiversity and land aspect. I'm very happy to be here and learn a lot since this morning, and thanks to IFAD for the invitation. Thank you very much. Listening the topics that we will talk about it since this morning and the information example bring on the tables, that makes me feeling there are a lot of possibility to invest on climate resilience. And I think based on these 4 components, communication should take a big part on it. And when I talk about communication, I really would like to highlight the positive communication. And I have a questions. How do you think that we make this communication to bring the successful example? And for the government, like you said, it will be a very challenges aspect. How do you deal with this on this project?
If I may, and I don't want to monopolize the questions. That's mainly on component for. As I said, this is a PowerPoint presentation. The both have some more details. I think the example that I mentioned, the National Remittances Stakeholder Network, is one example. It has public, private, and civil society included. I don't know if you know about remittances and diaspora. IFAD is the leading organizations behind the Global Forum on Remittances, Investment, and Development. We just had recently one in Kenya. 650 people were there over the 3 days, and it was not enough. But the good that was exceptional in terms of hearing the different opinions. But it was a global forum. That needs to happen at national level. People should know themselves from first name across ministries, but also understand the private sector and the civil society, and beyond. Why I mean by that, transnationally. There's work that needs to be done, and this is something very important for development agencies. There is work that needs to be done in Italy, and not just by IOM. There's by roles that IFAD, IFA as an IFI should do. This might be a big no-no for board members of IFAD says, wait a minute, why should we spend money in, no. But this is a reality that we need to look at. It is a transnational issue. There's money that needs to be spent where the investors are if you want this to work. If you don't want to do that, you cannot do that, fine, but you need to find somebody that can do it. So you need to cover all these areas, all these holes need to be covered if you want the equation to work at the end. So I hope it answered. Yeah, if you allow me, there was, I think, our colleague from FAO, and then I will give you the floor. Okay, then I don't know. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Is that okay? She was fine. Just 1 second. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4 in order.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Again, Cristina Rapone from FAO, so the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN. So thanks a lot. I already said this morning, for us as well as an organization, we are exactly in the process of brainstorming and revising our approach on migration and as well on climate change and diaspora engagement. So I see a lot of interconnections and possibility to really come together to make a bigger impact. We are also thinking of, in the process of designing programs on enhancing the resilience of households and communities in areas at risk of climate-induced migration. And our components do match to a certain extent, so increasing access to information, improving the capacity of people to adapt, but also the role of mobilizing diaspora for climate action and climate adaptation, as well as engaging in capacity development at national and local level and ensuring policy dialogue. So I was wondering, now that you're also in this space, whether we also have a larger, let's say, a larger approach that could be, scaled up and adapted to different countries or different regions. At the moment, we got some small-scale funding to start some of the activities in 2 countries, in Uganda and in Nepal. And I don't know if those 2 countries are in your radar. We would be very happy, I think, to come together and try and see synergies and possible activities that can be implemented together, because again, looking at just a simple description, as you said, there is much more than that. I see a lot of interconnections and potentials. Also in areas that maybe are not directly linked to this program, but in general of the work of FAO. If I think about data, I couldn't agree more of the need to actually have those elements, not only in specific country or project level surveys, but rather in the national system. So how, as an international organization, how can we advocate for that to happen? How we can, I think IFAD, IOM, FAO as well, we have this role of bridging, the agricultural stakeholder and the migration one. So how can we facilitate that discussion so that, they can come together? And if I think about as well the investments, FAO is playing a lot of attention now through the end-to-end initiatives on agri-food system investments. How can we maybe together think about what's the role of diaspora in those investments? How can we tailor some of those opportunity to actually foster those investments? And same with, bigger climate financing, if we think of GCF or JEF. I think that there are bigger problems to which coming together may be one of the ways. So I would be very happy for that. But as well, if we have those concrete countries, I don't know if that's an opportunity. We'll be starting some activities there. We'll be happy with you, but also the other people that are in the room to join forces on that. Thank you.
Well, allow me just to say one thing. I mentioned an example about Nepal. This is something that we've done many years ago, and right now we're getting the results. So if you're going to Nepal, the merrier, not to redo the same errors, but and leverage on the results. So absolutely. Let me be very honest. The issue that I've seen over the 20 years of this, particularly from development agencies, is some sort of a territoriality that exists into, they might be funding about this, and I'm the knowledgeable person. If it is migration, IOM says, it's just me. Or if it is agriculture, IFAD says, it's just me. And that's the mistake. It's simply a mistake. And in Rome, we talk about Rome-based agencies collaboration, and we should definitely do that. But here, when we omit to do that, we really are making the community, the migrant and diaspora communities suffer, because no one has all the knowledge. And we should really come together, as you suggest, of course, in learning, not to redo the same mistakes. And this goes up to the level of, we see surveys that are not well done, that therefore the policies are not informative, and the topic dies until maybe some new government comes in and revives it. And 5 years went on. I mean, I can give you so many examples of that. We were discussing during the coffee break, this is a lot about, if artificial intelligence was dealing with this issue, I believe it will go a little bit faster, because there's some interests that are just, I call human factors. That happens, might be government changing, experts changing, not being here today. Who's going to drive this? The drivers for this can impact a lot. And this is a reality that we need to bring to bear. So exchange of information, I fully agree. So we can leverage on what others have done and move forward. I suggest one thing is not to try to go too far or too complex at this particular stage. That's the opposite problem of the sugarcoating remittances for everything. If we try to make remittances for every day of the week, it might become maybe too complex rather than bringing different stakeholders together. They should tackle that problem of complexity as together rather than jumping in later on. So it becomes more of a different discussion. I don't know if you have, no. Okay. Then now we have our ambassador. Then I believe we have the gentleman over there. So, please.
Oui, merci beaucoup, Monsieur le modérateur. D'abord, j'apprécie énormément la présentation des différentes activités du programme avec les 4 composantes. Sincèrement, la hiérarchisation, il n'y a pas de commentaires à faire à ce niveau, mais je pense que la 4e composante attire mon attention. Le partage des connaissances et la sensibilisation. Je crois que mon ami du Ghana a marché un peu sur ma langue en évoquant le cas du ministère de l'économie et des finances, qui est quand même un département qui est incontournable dans le dispositif. Le second département que je voulais vous suggérer, si cela vous agrée, c'est que ce n'est pas totalement un phénomène de mode aujourd'hui, mais dans la plupart des pays africains, il y a ce qu'on appelle les ministères dédiés aux ressortissants du pays résidant à l'étranger. Si vous verrez, ministère des Maliens résidant à l'étranger, ministère de la coopération et des Mauritaniens établis à l'extérieur, c'est très courant. Et avec derrière l'esprit d'un aspect politique, c'est d'élaborer une politique nationale de la migration et du retour des migrants. Donc, il serait bon, je vous le propose, que dans le cadre des consultations et du partage des connaissances et de la sensibilisation, que vous puissiez inclure ce département comme partie prenante. C'est une proposition. Maintenant, dans les consultations et des activités de sensibilisation avec les parties prenantes publiques et privées, je n'ai pas aperçu les principaux acteurs, les principaux intéressés, les migrants eux-mêmes. J'ai essayé de regarder. Hein? Ah, OK.
Sorry, it is in the public and private civil society. So it's 3 sectors, and civil society is what includes diasporas and migrants.
OK. Donc, cet aspect de ma question est sans objet en ce moment, parce que je disais, c'est quand même un volet des acteurs qui sont les principaux concernés et on ne peut pas parler de la mobilisation de leurs revenus en leur absence sans qu'ils ne soient sensibilisés, informés et que ce soit une concertation et une sensibilisation inclusive. Merci.
And I think that was said today. You're absolutely right. And that mistake is often made. Policies being discussed where, or even meetings like this, where the diaspora is not even present. And sometimes it's not easy because it might be political, they might be representing some groups, but they're, at the end of the day, the decision makers, the real ones, because we're talking about their contribution, be it financially, in kind, etc. They need to be part of the equation. Otherwise, that's it. I think it was said much better than me by my colleagues before. So thank you for that. Fully appreciate it. And on the component 4, again, you've been seeing a PowerPoint and you have the extract. The full proposition goes much more into detail, not about which ministries, why they're relevant. Of course, the Ministry of Diaspora Affairs, for instance, normally situated in the President's office. So indeed, it might be a political aspect, but they're always very involved. The problem in many countries is they don't have the backup of all the ministries. It looks like there's one entity taking care about what diaspora can contribute, and it cannot sit in one ministry. So this is why many others need to be included, and I think this is the rationale that we have included in component 4. Showcase why other key stakeholders on the public sector ministries need to be there. Private sector, the same thing. We need to talk about MTOs, MNOs, fintechs, commercial banks. Some of them thinking, really, I should be there. Yes, you're more important than ever. So that's really the importance of component 4. It's to make it work, to make it all work out. Mr. Yes, Luciano. No, okay, it's okay. And then you. Thank you.
Grazie a Sua Eccellenza che mi ha chiamato in causa. Sono Manidon Boubertrand, sono il presidente del coordinamento italiano delle diaspore per la cooperazione
Pardonnez-moi, je ne sais pas si la traduction en italien. C'est anglais ou français?
Ah, okay.
English
okay.
or French?
I try to do my best in English, so
You just
sorry,
speak one.
sorry.
I'm sorry, my apologies. There's just
Because
other people.
I'm Italian, so it's why this command. We talk about it all the day, many things, many interesting things about the climate changing. We know that in our country, many infrastructures like roads and industrial infrastructures are being destroyed by the climate changing. So what we think as our organization is that there can be some way to fight this kind of problem in our country. I think that I think that to surrender the remittance of diaspora effective for a development of our a resilient development of our country, is important that the activities are oriented on to reduce the vulnerability of to the climate exchange. So activities that the investment should be applied on activities that reduce the resilience of the vulnerability to the climate change. The increase of this resilience to the consequence of the climate exchanging, to contribute also to the transition to an economy that is low broadcast to carbon, and also to load out and behold some example as the remittance of diaspora can be used to sustain the development, like invest in infrastructure that are resilient to climate exchange, to the equal, for example, use technical materials who can make the road more resistant to rain events, which are very important. Example in my country, you can also find that the investment of in agriculture is can be useful also. This is some point that I wanted to share with you about these kind of things. So His Excellency was talking about diaspora. I'm from diaspora, and I used to also send money to home. I know what kind of difficulty this can come as a problem for the family. And many of our organization, I have an association also to make some projects from some cooperation project in my country, and we used to see that when there is some kind of problem, we used to see also to ask to the community to put some money of the community together to invest and solve a problem to a specific region in, for example, in Cameroon. A community of an association of our network has projected has done a project in Brazil in agriculture, and this project was really interesting and was fighting against climate changing, and has a great impact on the local community. And now we brought a Malian friend of us to go to see how the project has been done, and to try to replicate the same thing in Mali. So we can find solution also. We can bring our competencies. We want to share, to be on the table to discuss what we want to do on that basis. On other hand, because we know that maybe we can have creative solutions from problems that you find bigger. But we can
When
solve
you
it
say
at the
we,
local.
you're talking on behalf of whom?
Yeah.
Of the diaspora?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. No, sometimes it might be the institution, you know. If I may say just one thing is, let's not forget of diaspora ones. We can create a myriad of uses of money. The money should go into this and that, depending on what it is, but it starts at what diaspora needs. If they might be something that they don't know yet, we can educate on that and make them realize, and then make a more educated decision on their needs. But I agree with you. The idea of this components is to set the stage, to set the structure, also to include this. It needs to be responsive to the needs, again, to the realities. This is what this proposal basically, or this structure, this framework is about.
Just quickly, to your point about the importance of addressing the issues that have the biggest impact on people's lives. I don't think the term vulnerability assessment made the PowerPoint, but that is a major part of the initial assessments and into component 2. So what we would be looking at is, of course, those greatest vulnerabilities, and given the resources in the project, where's the best place to spend that money and that effort to address those things that impact, first of all, food and water security and livelihoods, and then beyond that, enterprise, commerce, business, transportation, where relevant. So absolutely, the idea here is to address vulnerabilities in the most cost-effective and rational way.
I'm Francesco Luciani, the head of the Migration and Forces Placement Unit in Directorate General International Partnerships of the European Commission. Just wanted to, first of all, thank you very much for this very interesting conversation today. We are, of course, a happy partner with you in supporting the PRIME project, and that's also witnesses the long-term interest that we have on promoting use and work on remittances, and also diaspora in general for development. Of course, we are also operating in many other areas that are connected, were mentioned today. And certainly I just can mention the work that the European Commission, European Union in general is doing on promoting Green Deal. So all work towards indeed climate change and adaptation, the work on addressing root causes of irregular migration and managing migration, the work on forces placement. So there are plenty of things that are, let's say, on the table. The question is how to connect them. And I can say that as we have been 1 month ago still at the Global Refugee Forum, I would say we are moving ahead relatively strongly for our targets on, for example, address internal displacement linked to climate change, environmental degradation. We are going to be present
soon, including, for example, southern part of Africa, southern Asia, various parts with programs of large scale on addressing indeed internally displaced. The question mentioned today is, of course, a little bit different. It's more on migration rather than on forced displacement, although there are many gray zones. So I'm very happy that, just to say, I wanted to witness that indeed this effort to connect dots is very important, and indeed the bridging is the clear challenge. And you mentioned also the question of addressing the root causes also of irregular migration up to a certain extent. That is, of course, is a topic extremely dear to the European Union in these days. So finding solutions that can help promoting the development, but also curbing. So this is also of great interest, and indeed we will be happy to continue discussing with you and with other partners on all this. First, that's as a general remark, I wanted to thank you for this opportunity. But then I had a specific question, and it's late for this kind of questions, so I don't expect to do again all the work. But simply, I mean, in the end, I mean, we have in front of us this problem is a global scale. So in the end, it's crucial to also pick up concrete countries, concrete areas of the countries, concrete routes of remittances. So I was wondering, of course, I mean, this requires exact detailed mapping. I was rather wondering, that's a little bit my question, to make it simpler, my question, that would be otherwise more complicated. In terms of public authorities engagement, I mean the public authorities from the beneficiary countries. What are the, it's not an exercise of name shaming that I want to promote, but rather of naming, not shaming. What are the countries that, in your view, are doing better to enable their diasporas to work more on investments, and also to ensure that remittances are best used for development in general, climate adaptation in particular in this very moment? What are also the policies? If you had to recommend to the authorities of the beneficiary countries what they should at least guarantee and do in order to at least guarantee that this mechanism can happen, and that donors, migrants can find an adequate context in which they can trust to work. What would be your recommendations, and also countries that can represent good examples? Of course, there are plenty of other factors, from war to climate change, that then can jeopardize any good intention by national authorities. That's clear. But maybe there is a margin where public authorities can make the difference. That is the question. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a loaded question, but and since we're getting to the end, but I'm going to answer one thing. If you ask me, who are the ones that benefiting countries? Those that have more experience by years. One of them is your country, Italy. When there's a crisis, Italians abroad really support this country. The other one is mine, Portugal, for instance. We still receive $3.5 billion of remittances because we also send, doesn't make us just as promoted. We receive. Now, financial institutions, political parties, they really work on unison because they know how much the diaspora abroad, the Portuguese community, in my case, if I can mention, contributes to that. There's never political argument about that, interesting enough. The banks have so integrated that they don't even call it remittances anymore. They have actually bank accounts for the diaspora abroad. Border is not a problem. They have branches on the other side. It's seamless. You don't see the difference, but they're doing that. Spain is still receiving a tremendous amount of remittances. Portugal, and Italy as well. But we don't talk about that. But the examples here, I think, is great. Now, a lot of that could be brought up, as we were saying, the lessons learned for Africa and so on. I don't want to do any shaming because some have something. For instance, a ministry of nationals abroad is great. Alone, it's a biggest mistake because it gives the impression that the problem is solved. Oh, there's a ministry that takes care of that. Normally, there's one person, a secretary, and a technical person. That's not enough. So more resources are needed. So for this, we need to understand really those realities. particularly if we start connecting this with others. It's challenging. The good thing is that it's been done, or at least big parts of it have been done in the past. So, but I'm pretty sure at least I try to be innovative in my answer by maybe saying something that no one expects is this. This started in the 60s, the lessons learned about this. Lessons learned that can be replicated. Is there a final words that we would like to, there's, because where? Okay. Can we do two more? And then we're gonna have to conclude because we need to, Carlos here, right? Yeah. Can you make it brief,
Okay,
please?
merci. Ouais, merci beaucoup parce que depuis le matin, je pense qu'après tous les débats, il y a la nécessité donc de créer un environnement propice pour l'investissement de la diaspora et que nous reconnaissons que une politique favorable peut favoriser le meilleur investissement de la diaspora. Il y a des exemples réussis qui ont été présentés, mais il est à constater que chaque pays a des contextes, des besoins, mais également des approches spécifiques. Et pour cela, il est nécessaire qu'on puisse adapter des politiques en fonction des réalités des pays, mais également des aspirations de chaque diaspora. C'est pour dire que il y a un besoin, comme quelqu'un l'a dit, de soutenir les pays pour que les pays concernés puissent faire des sondages qui vont leur permettre de formuler des politiques réelles, spécifiques, qui puissent les permettre de réussir au vu des exemples d'autres pays. Mais il y a également qu'au niveau régional, pour l'Afrique, il y a une initiative que nous appelons la Grande Muraille, l'initiative de la Grande Muraille verte pour le Sahel et le Sahara. Il y a l'initiative sur les éco-villages qui sont exactement dans la même dynamique que l'initiative 3S. Et le plaidoyer ici, c'est de voir la possibilité de faire la connexion entre donc ces trois initiatives et donc pour en tout cas dans la vision de l'accélérateur de cette initiative-là, de l'initiative de la Grande Muraille verte ou autre soutenue par l'UNCCD et donc dans le cadre de la coalition. Et voilà, merci beaucoup.
Somebody's shutting me down, it looks like. And this is the approach, of course, is to link with the others. I'm not going to comment if it's okay with you, but comment well taken. And I would like to invite our last comment and question of the afternoon, not of the night. Please, if you can introduce again yourself. Then if you can maybe, or you're going to be provided with one. And then we will go for the closing session because we are.
Thank you very much. My name is Absalom Sakala. I'm coming from Zambia. I'm the UNCCD National Focal Point. So I just wanted a little bit of clarity on components 2 and 3 when we are talking about innovations. You find that in the countries of origins, for example, in my country, we have the national diaspora policy, and we put in measures to leverage remittances for sustainable management of the land resources and national development as a whole. And also, there are measures also to leverage diaspora investment for various national development agendas. Now, when we are talking about this, are we talking about innovations in the countries of origin, or we are talking about innovations also in the host countries? And if that is the case, how is this going to be done and how is it going to be achieved? Thank you.
All of the above, actually. A lot of national strategies on this says we need to leverage remittances for development so they can be more productive. Next bullet point. We need to do this, X, Y, Z, and so on. Very nice. but it fails to say how. We just says that we need to. Commitment is been done, political, but that's it. No one knows how to do it. And then it's there. So this is a reality. I'm not going to shame or blame anyone, but I know I've read it with my own eyes. And unfortunately, there's a, this is supposed to provide the how. We want to say is you have that priority. Well, these type of innovations can help you in doing that. Of course, the idea in developing this proposal and the examples is to bring examples on remittances and digitalization. Exactly. How do you do it? Who are the players? What can you get out of that? On for investment is the same thing. What kind of a mechanism are we, the spectrum of investment mechanisms that you can be using depending on your realities that goes from diaspora bonds to crowdfunding mechanism and what it should be your checklist when you do that. This is, I think, what the 3S, this is 3S initiative is trying to offer. So in order to match the political, let's say, you know, or strategic considerations that a country has. I don't, again, you saw PowerPoint, of course, of that. So it just, but we're very glad that this opened your appetite to know more, because that's exactly the next stage on our end. I'm going to be butchered if I don't close this meeting right now. So for that, actually, I would like to call our colleague Juan Carlos Mendoza Casadiegos. Is Director of the Environment, Climate, Gender, and Social Inclusion, known as ECG here in IFAD. And maybe we stay, colleagues, we stay here while maybe Carlos, so you're not all alone in here. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, distinguished excellencies, colleagues and friends. I know I'm standing between you and hopefully a nice aperitivo or some time in Rome this evening. I just want to first start by thanking UNCCD that it's allowing us to work in partnership in this initiative. I think this topic is particularly personal for me for two reasons. One, I used to work in the UNCCD before I came to IFAD, so I am very familiar with this effort. And second, because I myself have been sending remittances probably since I was 24 years old or so. So these are things that really matter. This is a challenging problem, I think, since maybe the mid-2000s, at least in many of the developing countries, when they awoke to the importance of remittances. There's always been this focus on how can we turn remittances into investment. And I remember attending meetings in the mid-2000s when experts would say remittances are only being used for consumption. Isn't that really, really bad? They should be used for investment. And in reality, yes, there is a reason why it is used for consumption purposes. I mean, one of them is obviously poverty, and it's also the investment that the family has made in sending some members precisely abroad with this purpose. So, but we still have been trying to tackle this and how to reorient these remittances. And I think now what we're doing with this initiative to put it in terms of how to increase climate resilience of communities and more sustainable land use is really critical, because these are precisely the drivers of poverty in many countries, particularly in Africa. And I think it makes sense. Having said that, as we heard now, let us not forget that at the end of the day, these are private flows. And I think we need to be very mindful of the sense of agency and ultimately control over their destiny that the diaspora and their respective families need to have. And I think it's within this spirit that we have prepared this proposal that you've been discussing today for this break. I know the conversation will continue tomorrow, particularly with country representatives, precisely to how to find ways to make sure that these, let's call it, private interests of the diaspora can be aligned with the national policies, in this case, particularly on sustainable development and climate resilience. I think we'll be working precisely on how to build this broader ecosystem that will support that process. And again, I think in closing, I just want to say that, as our Associate Vice President said this morning, I think EFAT and also our partners here in UNCCD look forward to the opportunity and really the privilege to accompany all of you in this process. With this, I thank you very much, and I apologize that today is not sunny, but it is Rome, so I hope you get to enjoy the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to all the participants today. We closed today's session, so this is just a reminder for the government representatives that we are going to meet for the internal consultation tomorrow morning, 9:30. We are going to meet in the Oval Room, which is not this Italian room, it's a smaller room where we usually have the executive board, is on the other side of this floor. So we will meet here tomorrow again with the government representatives at 9:30 in the morning. Thanks again for your participation, and enjoy your evening. Thank you.